topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Hey, good afternoon, Illinois. Welcome to another Ask the Expert show where we bring you the top experts in the field of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. This is our 15th year with the Ask the Expert show. Our expert today, we hit a home run on. We have two categories that are really important in not only in Illinois, but throughout the country: bankruptcy law and tax relief. And we found one of the finest attorneys who handles both bankruptcy law and tax relief. And I'm so glad that we have him. And he's with us every month. He'll be again back with us again next month. We got some of your letters saying about when the show was going to be on again. You can go back to iHeart or Spotify and watch and listen to these shows as many times as you want. They're always there in the iHeart and the Spotify library. Let's go to our expert. I am so glad that we have him, attorney Kevin Benjamin. Good afternoon, Kevin.
How you doing?
You know, buddy, I got to tell you something. People love your stories. You know, you'll revert back to a client that you had and you tell the story. I got to tell you, people love those. So as many of those as you want to do, you're more than welcome to do. But I had a guy wrote me the other day. He saw we were promoting your shows coming on, and he said, I love it when Kevin tells his stories. So I just wanted to throw that in.
Thank you.
Tell people about Benjamin Legal Services.
Well, we're a Chicago-based firm. I'm licensed in Illinois, Florida, U.S. Tax Court, a bunch of federal jurisdictions, stuff like that. We do a lot of debt relief, bankruptcy, tax resolution, negotiating with the IRS, restructuring debt, Chapter 11, 13, things like that. Businesses and individuals who need help.
Well, I got to tell you, I know you have been in practice a long time, Kevin, and you've built up an incredible practice. Today, we're going to start. We actually split the show up for the 50 minutes, and for some reason, we always start off with tax relief first, and we don't have as much time for bankruptcy. So today, we're going to start off with bankruptcy for the first half of the show. And gosh, Kevin, there's so much information that people don't know about. And I got to tell you, Kevin, what amazes me is there's people who still don't know what Chapter 7, 11, and 13 are. That's the ones that we get the most questions on. But there's other chapters besides that, too. Would you mind going over the different chapters?
Sure. Well, first of all, Chapter 9 is for governments. Chapter 12 is for farmers. 11 is like a corporate restructuring of debt. Businesses stay in business, but they restructure their debt. An individual can do a Chapter 11. Sometimes they have to because there's debt limits, but it's usually designed for a corporation. Chapter 15 is like international cross borders. Chapter 7 is a straight bankruptcy, which people sort of filing bankruptcy to mean Chapter 7 liquidation. And Chapter 13 is like a court-ordered bill consolidation, a personal restructuring of debt. The way a corporation does a Chapter 11, only it's more streamlined, affordable, simpler in that matter. And then Chapter 7, as I mentioned, is your straight liquidation, but most people don't lose anything because it's federal law, but state exemptions. You're allowed like some equity in your house, car, depending on the states, different exemptions. So most people aren't losing anything. Well, actually, almost no one loses anything. Otherwise, you're not going to do it. I have some clients that, we file Chapter 7. You analyze the whole thing. My job is, what are your options, the pros and cons of each? What do you qualify for? So like I have some 7s going on that maybe they're, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 over the exemptions. I doubt a trustee is going to do it, but it depends on different factors. And then we look at the risk. Is it $5,000 or $6,000, $7,000, and you're getting out of $100,000 in unsecured debt? Then maybe it's fine to do it. Because it's not really that much of a risk. So it's all relative. We help you make an informed decision. But basically, Chapter 7, you could qualify for a discharge every 8 years only. And then there's an income test, and there's ways to get under it with the deductions, and you got to claim your exemption. So it's not just filling out forms. We actually got to do some work. So you have a lawyer representing you. And then, creditors can make objections to the U.S. trustee or Chapter 7 trustee or 13 trustee to your discharge or plan. So that can lead to some litigation. Depends on what you're doing. So that's the bankruptcy stuff. The tax resolution.
Now, if you file bankruptcy, individual bankruptcy, Kevin, you can't file bankruptcy again for, is it 8 years or 10 years?
We can't get a discharge more than every 8 years. So sometimes people file a 7, they wind up going through the case, and maybe the case gets closed without a discharge just for some administrative reason, in which case, if you had to file again, you actually could. Otherwise, you just fix your administrative problem and get your current discharge. Otherwise, if you're barred, if you committed fraud or you litigated where they barred you from filing on those creditors again, or maybe they just barred you for filing again for a certain amount of time, depending on your previous case, if it was good faith, bad faith, stuff like that. But generally, you can get a discharge every 8 years of your debt. Otherwise, you got to go into a 13, Chapter 13. But then again, sometimes the reason for a 13 is even if you qualify first, let's say you're behind on a car, or maybe you want to cram the car down, or you're in foreclosure, you're behind on the mortgage. So you want to do a 13 anyway, because you want to catch up, stop and maintain, cure and maintain the payments, stop a foreclosure, save your house, in which case you could pay back maybe the unsecured creditors, maybe pennies on the dollar, which is kind of like doing a Chapter 7 with the 13, even though you're not allowed to, but it kind of is, because in a 13 you can pay some creditors in full and some not in full. It's based upon what they call like the liquidation analysis. Creditors in a Chapter 13, the credit cards, unsecured creditors, stuff like that, they must get paid what they would have gotten in a 7. Oftentimes they would have got nothing in a 7. So you can pay them, nothing or a couple pennies on the dollar. Otherwise, let's say there's like 30,000 non-exempt equity, total, right? And you owe $100,000 unsecured. So then you're doing like a 30% plan on those, but you're doing a cure and maintain on your mortgage or your car, stuff like that. So there's reasons for it. You don't always need a 7. If your car is repoed, you want to get it back, you want to file a 13. Some debts in Chapter 7 aren't discharged. Like if you got a discharge, like not child support, but the domestic support obligation could be discharged in a 13, but not a Chapter 7. Certain like parking tickets, stuff like that, that's what they call super discharge. You can get in a 13, not a 7. So there's all kinds of little intricacies of how you do things. But basically, because a 7 is like a fresh start, they call it, right? So it used to be 6 years and then made it 8 years. And so you can't just, do it and then go borrow a bunch of money and then just do it again. They want you to, have some kind of repercussions. But if you can't do a 7 again, you can do a 13. So, and even if you do a 13 and it's dismissed or even finished, you can do them again because you're paying people back. Saying that the U.S. Congress, they encourage Chapter 13s. When they revised the last big Bankruptcy Reform Act in 2005, the BAP-CIPA, Bankruptcy Abuse Prevention and Consumer Protection Act, which is a joke for a name, but that's the name. they actually encourage Chapter 13s. You're keeping stuff. And even Chapter 13, you can only go like 60 months. Something you go 3 years too, but sometimes 60 months gets a lower payment depending on the situation. And you got to qualify for a 3 or 5 year plan, which you can talk to a lawyer for. But 60 months is the most you can go, right? So, depending on your debts and what you're doing, even if you could pay it back faster, you don't have to. For example, you're in foreclosure, you're $40,000 in arrears, you're taking your house. They won't take your mortgage payment unless you give them the $40,000 on top of it. Well, pay that back at no interest over 5 years by pushing a button, or sort of like that's what we do, get the automatic stay, and you maintain the current payment, and it's done. Even if you could afford more, you don't have to pay it back more. And you keep all your assets. Nobody messes with you, so that's pretty good.
Do you find people are embarrassed to come in and meet with you because they're embarrassed that they're in the position they're in? Do you ever find that?
I'm not embarrassed to see me in person. Sometimes they're embarrassed to give me a review, or something like that. But as a client, you don't have to say, what you did. I do other things. If I represented you, I represented you. If I did a good job, I did a good job. You don't have to give your personal, what I did for you. No, because people are like stressed out. There are some people that they talk to their friends, or they're on Google and don't file bankruptcy because you're going to be screwed. That's all this BS. And they have these misgivings, but here they are seeing you, right? Because you're in trouble. So what I say to them is, so what do your friends tell you to do? Oh, don't file bankruptcy. You'll be screwed for life. Well, that's not true. So then what's the answer? They don't know. Oh, consolidate your bills or do debt settlement. Oh, they heard that online or some radio ad. Okay, well, debt settlement costs money. You got to settle your debts with cash. How much cash do you have? Nothing. Okay, so what are you settling with? People think, well, how much do I need? I don't know. I'm not negotiating with your creditors and say, hey, how much are you let's negotiate a dollar amount. Then now let me see if I can get it. It doesn't work that way. Money talks, And most of those debt consolidation companies out of California, those are all BS. They're not helping you out. They can't do anything for you. They're just making money on you, and you're going to wind up in trouble. They tell you they got lawyers all over the case, and if you get sued, they're not going to do nothing. So that's just a waste of time. If you're in over your head, the first step to getting your credit fixed is to get out of debt. You got to solve the problem. So, you're paying back all this money, these dues. People are like, I have clients coming. I've been doing consolidation with this company for like 3 years. Yeah. How's that working out for you? They're out $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. And the credit's crap, and they're getting sued by creditors. Now they're filing back. Well, they could have filed 3 years ago and saved all that money. Plus, your credit is now fixed because it's been 3 years, not fixed. You can fix it, I'm saying. So it's 3 years behind you. And then you have the $20,000 or $30,000 in your pocket, right? It's a big difference. Put it behind you as fast as you can, right? All this crap about this 10-year thing. What the Fair Credit Reporting Act says that allows you to have it on your credit report, and that has nothing to do with can you get a loan or not, right? It's your credit score that gets the loan or not, right? Now, of course, having it on there maybe lowers your score a little bit, but if you just filed and it's like 2 months ago, yeah, maybe it still affects you, but you can reestablish your credit really fast, right? And people get loans all the time. Even car loans, you'll be getting offers for the car loans before you're even discharged in the chapter. You know what I'm saying? They want you back.
That's amazing.
You know what I'm saying? There's no law that says you can't get credit. That's a bunch of BS. Or the people come in and like, oh, I don't know if I file bankruptcy, how am I going to get a mortgage? Well, first of all, why are you here, right? Second of all, because you're in debt, you're filing. How's that mortgage coming along now? Oh, I can't get one. No kidding. Because you have all this debt, right? Because your credit is not just your, it's your debt to income ratio. It's also your credit utilization. And there's different, how long is a credit, what's the most balance you've used, all these different factors. And there's different credit scores if you're applying for a mortgage, applying for a car, because the credit system is designed to not have you be A-rated for credit, but they want you credit, they want you credit worthy, they want to give you credit, right? They just want to charge you higher interest. So, it all fluctuates on which credit report you're doing, and if it's a mortgage or a car, it's all ridiculous. But you want to reestablish your credit. There's a lot of ways to do that. And you can get back in the credit system real fast. There's no penalty, all this stuff. Even if you did credit repair, and it had the BK come off your credit report, doesn't matter. You know, I mean, it may help your credit score a little bit, but not as much as you think. But if you apply for like a mortgage or a car and it says, have you filed bankruptcy the last 10 years? And if it's been less than 10 years, you better say yes, or you're committing fraud, right? So then people come in like, hey, I want to rent a house or rent an apartment. Well, why wouldn't someone rent you an apartment? It's like, so you go to a house, you rent a house or an apartment, right? And you come to a landlord and you got all this debt and people are suing you and garnishing. Hi, can I rent your place? But I didn't file bankruptcy. Well, they give you like a bonus, give you like a little prize? No. They'd rather have you file, oh, wait, you filed bankruptcy, terrific. You can't do it again for 8 years. My lease is going 1 or 2 years, right? You haven't have any other debts. You have a job. Beautiful. You can pay me. Same with the cars. They're like, great. The car loan's going 5, maybe 6 years now, these years, and the car helps you establish the credit because you're paying it. So you want that as well. And you have no other creditors, so they'll do it for you all day long. I have people who file bankruptcy and say, well, I couldn't get credit. Well, because you're not working, or now you lost your job. I mean, you still got to have, it's not just your credit score when you apply for a loan. How much are you making? How much are you applying for credit? You know what I'm saying? Every lender is different, different factors and stuff like that. But it's not as bad as you think. And there's no stigma, all this crap, especially this day and age where everyone's charging you 30, 40% interest. There's gouging. What are you going to borrow, 30 grand at 30% interest, or, 35 now, some of them are these. Look at your statements, how much you're paying monthly on interest. It's probably more than even your mortgage. So it could be more than your payment. So you're actually making a payment every month and you're still getting farther in debt. What's the point? I'm saying no one's giving you brownie points for being in debt. Yeah. And you won't get credit, even if you think your credit score is good, because when someone analyzes you, your debt to income ratio is too high. So, you can only handle a certain amount of debt load. So, all this stuff online or talking to your friends, everyone knows, everyone's got an answer for you. Just do what you got to do for yourself. And, if you can work it out, great. I mean, if you want to try to settle, the thing you want to try to settle your bills. Okay, suppose you got 2. Okay, suppose you got 7 or 10. What are you going to start settling your bill? Maybe someone's giving you some money. They're getting discounts, you're cashing them out. Suppose you got 10 of them. You settle 2 or 3 of them. The other ones don't settle. Now you have the money that you want to file in bankruptcy anyway because you didn't settle all of them. You know what I'm saying? So, right. So you're just wasting your time. And even then, they're going to report on the credit report settled for less. So, it's not like it's pristine credit, right? So you're just spinning your wheels and wasting time. So people only call me when they're in trouble. As far as that
we
goes.
just got a text in from Jamie in Oak Brook. I just found your show. I can't believe there's not more shows on such an important credit. Well, we've been doing this for over 2 years. My question is, first of all, do you handle credit repair? And my second question is it really true that you can take somebody from a 500 credit score up to somewhere in the 600s?
Well, first of all, sometimes when you file bankruptcy, your score actually goes up.
Really?
People get amazed. I mean, yeah, first of all, your ratio boom is going. Not everybody, but don't forget your score is not always that high when you file, right? But sometimes people's credit scores are pretty good when they're filing, but it's the debt load, and their scores sometimes still go up. So yes, getting your credit fixed is not hard at all. Credit repair, don't call those credit repair companies, and you can do it yourself. Okay, have I done that for people? There's a way. The real way to do it as a lawyer is to, under the Fair Credit Reporting Act and Fair Debt Act and all these different, just got to find things. You don't go to the credit bureaus or they call them the consumer reporting agencies. You got to go to the creditors too, and it's a lot more work than you think. You're not doing Lexington law with $70 plus a bond package or $80 over. Or if you want the good package, it's all that BS, right? $100 a month. What are they doing? Nothing. They're writing letters to the credit bureau saying it's not mine. Not if it's not, and if it is yours, that's actually fraud on your part, you know. And even if it comes off, doesn't mean it doesn't come back on, right? So can it work that way? Yes, but that if that's the case, you don't need someone writing a letter for you, right? You can do it yourself. The credit report has to be 100% accurate, right? So you can look at your credit report. Oftentimes, a lot of even if it's like you didn't pay this creditor, right? Doesn't mean it's being reported correctly. So in that case, you know, there's a legitimate dispute, a reinvestigation you should have launched from the consumer reporting agencies, or maybe you go to the creditor first and dispute it. They're supposed to take it off your credit report for 30 days. Probably don't. Then you have an investigation going. Then the consumer reporting agency says, oh, they verified it. How they verified? Because if you got the proof that they went to the creditor first, supposed to be off. Now you got them on maybe a Fair Credit Reporting Act, you know, or some other violation, and you can sue. You know, so it's like all kinds of different tricks, but not tricks, but that's what being a lawyer is. That's not being a credit repair company. And there's also ways sometimes you can settle with work something out with the creditor on a dispute to have them adjust. Because if there's a subscriber, they could adjust it. Sometimes people actually get a real dispute on what's going on. So there's all kinds of ways to do it, but it's not this 8-hour a month crap and some credit repair company who's a non-lawyer and they're going to give you all these, they're 97% all this crap. No, but also like, you know, go to the Chime or, you know, put some money in a savings account or save some money, get a CD, right? Go to the bank and borrow money off your CD. You put a couple $100 back, you know, pay it back. Now you have a bank loan, right? Now we got the car loan, right? Now you get the car loan. Now you get the car loan. So you have different kinds of credit reporting, right? Installment loans, revolving credit, I'm saying. So those all are different points, scores also, right? Company called Chime has a card. They have a credit builder card. It's like you put your money in your own savings and use a couple buttons, but they report to the credit bureau. You know what I'm saying? So you get some points, you know, for that. And then there's a ways to reestablish your credit. And then next thing you know, the BK's discharge, it's behind you. Your ratio is down. You're getting positive credit on your score. 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. Yeah, now you might get a mortgage, right? Okay, it's a year or two behind you. How much down payment? You know, how much trying to borrow for the mortgage? You qualify for that. But a lot of companies will finance you. You're not penalized and a bad person. You got out of debt and took your mulligan, so to speak, which is what the discharge is, right?
Ron in Deerfield, I'm enjoying your show. I'm curious, does equity get wiped out in Chapter 11?
Equity? You mean for business?
I guess so.
Or like a house? Equity?
He just said, does equity get wiped out in Chapter 11? Maybe he can.
Okay, so there's individual Chapter 11. There's a corporate Chapter 11. So in a corporate Chapter 11, you're talking about equity. Usually, talking about maybe the business owners. So depends how you do the plan. You want to keep your equity, or when you file a plan in Chapter 11, you actually are trying to get votes from the creditors. So then there's also a thing called the absolute priority rule, depending on what kind of case you file, if that applies or not. And a creditor may go for the absolute priority rule. Now you got to pay 100%. But then there's an exception called new value, and all this kind of stuff where the equity guys can keep their money. So in a corporation, Chapter 11, yes and no. Is it possible? Yes. Okay. And then if an individual, if you're talking about like equity in your house or something like that, I think that's why you're filing. You're keeping all your equity. So on a 13 or an 11, you're keeping equity, and how much you're paying to certain creditors depends on the exemptions and how much equity you have. Okay, so it's got to be what they call a feasible and confirmable plan, right? And then you have your ways to show it. It's a disclosure statement and income projection, stuff like that. So you keep your equity in a 13, and you keep your equity in an 11. On a corporate Chapter 11, if you're talking about equity for the business people, that's a possibility as well.
Who tends to get paid first in Chapter 11?
Well, in Chapter 11, you file your plan, right? So, like you in Chapter 11, so Chapter 13, you file a plan, right? but you're paying, they're secured, unsecured, maybe priority creditors, and you make one payment a month, and a Chapter 13 trustee pays it for you. So it's I use the phrase like, court order consolidate, like a book consolidation court order, which is great. It's 0%, right? And it also works because you got automatic stay. It's federal court order, right? But it's not like a consolidation where you have like 10 creditors for $1,000, 10 grand, and you're making everyone gets 1/10. You get priority of who gets paid first, like the mortgage company would get paid first, right? Then the priority unsecured creditors would get paid, and then the unsecured creditors would get paid later. So over the 5 years, your X percent, it's going to be the plan, but it's not like everyone's getting money. Sometimes those creditors don't get money for a couple of years, and there's nothing they can do about it, right? But that's how that works. In Chapter 11, you're soliciting votes, you're balloting, creditors get to vote. And it's not individual creditors. What you do is you do a disclosure statement, a Chapter 13 plan, and you put creditors in different classes, right? There's a secured class or priority class, or different reasons for different unsecured creditor claim, or different ways to classify claims. And you can't just classify claims any way you want. It's got to be like-minded creditors, because you want to get the votes of not just the creditors, but of the class, right? So you want to get, each creditor's class to be voting and to have enough votes and percentage-wise that you have that class vote. And then you have the other class. You cannot say, well, man, I'm just going to take these creditors and make two classes because I'm going to get this class's vote then. Then it could be a contested. But I don't want to get too technical, but basically you make classes that are like-minded, and then you solicit the votes, and then if the votes work, it's confirmed, right? However, sometimes there's ways to override some votes, asking the judge to cram down a vote. Maybe someone's creditor is voting in bad faith. Maybe they didn't qualify to vote. Just because you're a creditor doesn't mean you qualify to vote. You got to be an impaired creditor, right? Sometimes not all creditors are impaired. And then you got to see why they're saying no. So there's all kinds of ways to do it, but generally people want to get paid. So,
Right.
If you're really filing on Chapter 11 and, whether it's corporation restructuring, whatever, also you could be restructuring debt, canceling contracts or cramming down, mortgages, because maybe it's not a residence. They have the anti-modification provision. Maybe it's a commercial property or second property, or not, or it's a residence, but it's not 100% secured by the mortgage. Like it could be a 2-flat or 3-flat. The ways to cram it down and restructure stuff, right? That's why you're filing a plan. Also, you want to show how you're paying it, right? So if you just file a case and it's I'm going to get a job later, or I'm going to 13, I'm going to pay. It ain't going to work. And if you're funding a Chapter 11, okay, how are you funding it? Are you funding it because you don't have to fund it from income? You can fund it from I'm going to get rental income, or I'm going to maybe sell one or two of my properties, or there's different ways to fund it, right? So how are you funding it, and is that a reasonable source? I'm saying you can't just say I'm going to have the money later. So but because if you have the money, they want to get paid. So
Exactly.
I have cases going on. People I have some people in individual Chapter 11s, 130,000 plus in behind. They tried a 13 with someone else, but it's only 60 months, right? So I've done a couple of those. I got one confirmed last year, and one I'm about to, or trying to get the votes out. And the bank's been cooperating, and that's going to be more than a 6-year pay, more than a 5-year payback. We have to get their vote, but so far they've been cooperating, and the clients have good income now, and and they want their money. The credit, what I'm saying. So if you could do
Right.
it, and of course, if you get a confirmed plan and you don't make the payments, then it's either dismissed or they modify their stay and they go. And all the money you paid on those plans, the creditors keep. So unless you're filing in bad faith, you're fine.
Kevin, before we go into tax relief, tell people how they can reach you. And also, people have asked for your website address.
Okay. So the scroll seems to say BJ Kevin, which is not my name. It's J Kevin, my former name. Benjamin Legal Services is benjaminlaw.com. I have a company called Noble Tax Relief, nobletaxrelief.com. 312-853-3100 is the office line. Email me at attorneys@benjaminlaw.com. All kinds of ways to get it.
Okay. We're going to go into IRS. And boy, I got to tell you, Kevin, when someone's got the IRS after them, it has got to be such a load on them. But I promise you, if you'll sit down and meet with Kevin, first thing is, I know, because I've been doing this for so long with him, you're going to feel so much better once you come out of Kevin's office. Because first of all, you no longer have to talk to the IRS anymore once you retain Kevin's services, right?
Correct. Same as if you're filing bankruptcy for the creditors. Yeah. So there's basically there's different power of attorneys or authorizations to represent someone before the IRS. Well, let's say I had a power of attorney on file. Yeah, then now you represent you before the IRS. We do our due diligence. If you're with a IRS agent, a revenue officer, or if you're in what's called automatic collections, wherever you are, we'll handle it. A lot of the tax resolution and bankruptcy, the way you analyze things is really similar. So that's how we got into doing both. And it's like, you hear all the scams on the radio, and I said someone called an hour ago. They hired this one national company and someone else. They're going to do this and that. They don't do anything. Because those are call centers, right? You're on the radio and hey, pennies on the dollar, and there's the Fresh Start program and things. The IRS and creditors don't want you to know all these secrets.
Exactly.
So there's no secrets, right? So it's the IRS manual and the code, and bankruptcy is the bankruptcy rules in the code. So, and there's just, there's ways to do things, right? So like on a penny on the dollar thing, like I was just telling this prospective client a couple hours ago, I don't call the IRS. Okay, I'm your lawyer. I start negotiating. I'm going to give you 7 cents on the dollar. No. So you negotiate what the reasonable collection potential is. Okay. And that could be, say, 10 grand. Now, the reasonable collection is how much your equity in your certain assets, which at a discount, and there's different ways to formalize things, right? And then there's things maybe are changing your income and stuff like that, and maybe things that they're saying should be included that we're saying we're not. So that's how you negotiate with the IRS, is your expenses and income and each individual one, what's percentage is included, 0 or nothing, etc. So now let's say you have the reasonable collection potential, the RCP, let's say it's 10 grand. I'm just to make it even numbers, right? If you owe $100,000 to the IRS and they agree it's 10 grand, that's 10 cents on the dollar, right? If it's $1 million, then that'd be a penny on the dollar, right? And if it's 20 grand, it's half on the dollar. It's still 10 grand either way.
Right.
So if someone gets, you got pennies on the dollar because you owe a lot of money, okay? Because people call, I owe 500,000, I owe $1 million, $3 million. I can't pay. How am I going to pay it? Well, you're not, because you were making the X before, and now you're not doing this. But you gotta show it, right? You gotta qualify for like offering compromise or something like that, So, because the IRS doesn't know, they don't know. All they know is you owe this money, and no one's opening the letters, no one's calling them, no one's representing you. They're happy to have a professional on it that they could talk to and do the collection information statement and what documents you need. And what documents also depends on, like there's different programs, like offering compromise, doubt as to liability, doubt as to collectability, streamlined, not streamlined, depending how much you owe, how much documents you need or not, right? So maybe you're close on a different, maybe we pay down $5 grand, get under a certain level. Now we're doing a streamline, something even. Installment agreement, right? But how many months are we doing on the installment agreement? Depends on like your CSED, your collection statute expiration dates. Someone called today that they owe $107,000, but from 2016 to 2024, right? But first of all, I know it's 100 stuff, but the reality is it's X thousands for this year, each year, right? And then I'm talking to the person. Turns out that in some of those years, the IRS filed the return. SFR, substitute for return. They just filed it for you because you didn't do it. Trust me, those are usually pretty high, right? So maybe you're going to file and amend those, have an accountant do it, and now you reduce your debt that way. Also, there's also penalty abatement possibilities depending on certain situations. But you want to know which ones are expiring too, because maybe you can get out of certain things in a certain time frame. Or is it dischargeable in bankruptcy? Generally they're not, but oftentimes they are. Right? There's exceptions to all these things. So we analyze everything, even if you don't want to file bankruptcy. I'll tell you, it can be. And I have some that are like significant. Hey, you could get it at $100,000, but I wouldn't do the bankruptcy because, maybe in someone's person's case, it's like they're going to lose a lot of different assets they have. So you don't want to do that, right? But oftentimes people they don't really have anything they're going to lose, and they're like, oh, I could just get rid of it, right? But then again, maybe you don't have to get rid of it if you don't want to file bankruptcy. Now maybe the offer in compromise may work, or what they call a partial pay installment agreement, where you're paying less. See, the offer in compromise takes your income stream, right, over certain months, equity and assets combined, and there's different what the C says, all that kind of stuff. And you're analyzing a number, right?
Right.
So, like I had a guy call a couple. He has a couple of thousand in equity, almost like $60,000, right? And some of them they're telling me the offer in compromise. Well, first of all, you didn't hire them. Why? Right. Second of all, in 10 seconds, you don't qualify. You got the equity right there, alone. Now, but then otherwise, some people have maybe it's making too much income, right? So with the partial pay installment agreement, they don't count both. So now it's like maybe you get the same relief, but a different program. Because what these guys on the radio doing, they're just marketing. You got a call center. Yeah, you qualify. Give me this.
Yes.
Our experts. We got a team of lawyers and CPAs. The team is on it. They're gonna. And we don't take people that don't qualify. Don't worry about all that kind of crap. That's just sales tactics, right? So and no one.
Your imitation is perfect.
Yeah. and then she then this person hired a lawyer. She told me too, right? And then now the lawyer's not calling her back, right? So, but I don't know what, I know the national one wasn't doing anything. And then she's like, well, then the lawyer said they get a better deal and do an offer in compromise. But I don't know what she told him. Maybe they could have. I don't know, right? But
right.
She doesn't know what she owes. No one's calling. So it's a mess, right? And oftentimes people, they're not open with the mail. They don't know what's going on. They don't know about the different programs. There's what's called currently non-collectible, also CNC, but that doesn't mean I someone call them, I got a CNC. Okay, but that just means right now they're not going to. You're getting levy letters, notices. You're in a hardship where if they did that, you couldn't feed your family or pay your more. That's a hardship. So now you're currently non-collectible, but now the IRS agrees. They mark but they don't go away. That's up to 2 years. During that 2 years, they're coming back. How you doing? Update your information. Because now if you are collectible, now, but you can do a resolution though. You know what I'm saying? But it's not like, I'm just currently non-collectible, which means that they're wiping it out. No, that's not what it means, right? Or you can't give your assets away. I don't have that. Because you had $300,000 equity, gave it to your son. Well, I don't have it, but you did. So now when we do the formulas, they're counting the 300. You can't just give it away and say, hey, so it's not like, but oftentimes people have a hardship where their income has changed, and things happen. And the IRS, sometimes you qualify for both, partial pay or installment agreement, offer and compromise. Which one are we going to do? So the government will look at the same thing we're looking at, right? So maybe you're getting X thousands on offer and compromise, right? But hey, if you did a installment agreement, even partial pay, you're getting, so maybe you're getting this on a offer and compromise, and you're getting a little bit more on a partial pay. But how much more? Because on an installment agreement, maybe it's going 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, right? So are you getting a lot more, or are you just getting a little more? Because now it's like a bird in the hand, so to speak. It's like, hey, the government may say, I'll just take the offer and compromise because that's, now we're done. Otherwise, during an installment agreement, doesn't mean you're going to pay, oftentimes they don't. You got a 4, 5, 6, 7, 72-month installment agreement. Oftentimes those fall apart. Your income changes, another hardship comes, and the government knows that, and it's just like litigating in a case that's called like nuisance value. Someone's suing you. I'll fight it, right? But then you got to pay your attorney fees, and then they offer a settlement that's like a lot cheaper than your attorney fees. And it's like sometimes people do it because it's called nuisance value. It's cheaper to do that than to pay my lawyer to go kick your butt, depending on what you're being sued for. So it's a very similar practice with the IRS. But there's what we call effective tax administration. But with the offering compromises and partial pays, there's different like sub programs in there, and the streamline or not, how many documents you need or not, how could you get from one level to the other, do you qualify for more than one, what happens if you're get it approved, then something happens, okay, take you out and we'll have to do another one, but it's like there's ways to do things. And meanwhile, we have a power of attorney on with the IRS. So right now, if you're getting like levy notices or IRS notices, stuff like that, liens, we can get with the IRS, get a collection hold for right now, at least I'm saying, and then we gather the information, and they just want to get it resolved, right? So otherwise, I have people in federal court that I represent. The IRS is sort of in federal court for things on the taxes, and now that's litigation. I'm in federal courts also. I'm also in the tax court, U.S. tax court. I'm also in the Supreme Court, but I never had a Supreme Court case. Probably never will. But my point is there's ways to resolve things, and the IRS, they're very aggressive now. They have a lot of money, and they're using a lot of AI right now. They're banging out the notices, the liens and levies. They're being aggressive because if you have assets, they're going to take it. I get people, they're sending like levy, but the assets have been gone for years, but they don't know, you know what I'm saying? But, they could take your wages, garnish your checking account, right? Attack that, levy that, right? People are like, I got the IRS. Yeah, well, now you got certain amount. I either got to file a Chapter 13 or 7, get rid of that, or I got to get I'm with the IRS right now and see if I can get a hold on that. But, once there's cash, I'm saying, but let's say someone's got a hold of someone's account, right? Whether it's a creditor or the IRS, let's say someone else, like I have people call, I got 50 grand. How much is your account? $500. Okay, so they're not getting 50 grand. Okay, so don't worry about that. But they get whatever's in there on that time the garnishment comes. But now they know where the account is. So you're getting paid next week, or you're getting a settlement, whatever, a check. So people think, well, they don't know about the account. Sure, they have your Social Security number. They just put it in the federal database, and they could in a minute they know every account you're on anywhere in the country or the world. It's not rocket science, right? Same with bankruptcy. It's like people. I do the asset searches. People. I called someone even yesterday. Well, what about this and that? And they were like, no, I'm not like Dick Tracy. The trustees could do the same thing. It's not like you're so smart. You know what I'm saying? And usually, like I have clients, like I get mad. Like, why are you not telling me everything? I'm supposed to be. I'm your lawyer. You know what I'm saying? I tell you if it's a problem, not your cousin, right?
Right.
So, and oftentimes what the problems are not really problems, or they're easily resolvable with bankruptcy planning or doing something. You know what I'm saying? So, but like I had one just 2 days ago. I filed the case a couple of weeks ago, and sometimes you have 14 days to finish. So I'm finishing. And it's a really easy case. So I thought, right? So nice guy, it's only a couple of creditors and the mortgage. And then I'm going over it, just finishing the case, going over it, and I'm like, well, how much you have in where'd that come from? Oh, I got the settlement. Well, you didn't mention that in the paperwork, for $35,000.
Oh,
right?
no.
Did you get it? Or after the case, I just got to disclose it. Now that affects your liquidation. I got to redo that, right? And then, and then I just paid that. Where'd the money go? Well, I paid, my father-in-law, my mother-in-law. I paid that. Well, you didn't disclose that either, right? So you got to disclose, and you can't just do that. And, I paid some loan. Why were you paying? You're filing bankruptcy, 13 even. Why are you paying these creditors that were paying the plan? Because you're actually favoring somebody, and now that's a preference. It's either got to come back, or someone could get your whole case kicked out. And the whole point for your case in this case was because you wanted to save your house on the mortgage foreclosure. So now you're risking your house because and why don't you call me, to ask me these things? You know what I'm saying? You don't think I wanted to know? I got, 30. And then he's like, oh, I paid this and that. Okay. So I'm like, okay, 35, that's 3,000. Okay, where's the other 20?
Right.
I mean, I'm not a math major, but I can do arithmetic, right? I mean, it's like also like, they're going to see the bank statements also. They're going to ask the same question. But the good news was I got it straightened out. We did the plan. It's costing him a little more. I'll probably get it confirmed for him. But when I filed the stuff that we had to file that he's certifying under penalty of perjury, we filed it timely and we filed it correctly. I just happened to, I thought it would be like a 30, 40 minutes to finish the case, wound up being 3 hours, but it got done. You know what I'm saying? So that's my point. It's like
that's what makes your job so hard, is people keeping things.
And frustrating because my client is a really nice guy. You know what I'm saying? Older couple, and he's just trying to do the right thing.
Right.
They're both on Social Security. They're mentioned, so to speak, and just keep their house. It's not a big, and they just have some problems. So I don't mind. I mean, I still get a little irritated. Just tell me. But other types of clients, when they're just lying to you, and then they have an attitude with you, like someone today, I almost had it out again for the 4th time with this one guy who loved me 2 weeks ago and loves me again, but every time he gets a letter from somebody or talks to somebody, he gets all goofy. I gotta say, we just talked about that last week. I'm the one who found it first and resolved it for you. Tell me how great it was. But I forgot. Then don't call my reception and have an attitude with them. I'm saying, now you're gonna talk to me.
I guess they think you're not gonna find out.
Yeah, So people, you have all kinds of clients. Most people are nice. They just need help. That's why I'm in the business, right? Some people are hiding things and we're in the same, like bankruptcy lawyers. We're in the Facebook groups, our local groups, and all that kind of stuff. We all have the same stories. It's like, oh, client came in today, said this. Oh, they're going to get back to me. We all know what that means. They're not getting back to you. They may be calling me tomorrow or someone else tomorrow because now they're going to know what not to say. You know what I'm saying? Right. So they're not going to tell me or someone else or vice versa. So, it happens all the time, more than people think, because everyone thinks they're so smart. It's like, and it's not even resolving debts or 13 restructuring or Chapter 11, you're resolving things. And yeah, there's issues sometimes, but you're trying to pay people, or if you qualify for 7, then you qualify. And that's your right? So, but it's not a Supreme Court case. It's not criminal unless you commit bankruptcy fraud, then it can be criminal. People don't understand that. You know what I'm saying? You get in trouble for that kind of stuff. But otherwise, you just need help. Have a lawyer do it. And, call someone like myself, and whether it's a tax resolution issue or, whatever it's got to be. People are more affordable than you think. And
don't try to handle this yourself. This is why we have shows like this with Kevin. You should not try to handle it yourself. You've got to have someone. And Kevin is, well, I think what I love about Kevin, he's so upfront with you. And he might not tell you exactly what you want to hear, like some of these big national companies. He doesn't sugarcoat it. And you really come out of his office with a much better feeling. Kevin, just tell people how they can reach you again.
Kevin, BenjaminLaw.com or NobleTaxRelief.com, or just call me at 312-853-3100. But if you're on the website, like BenjaminLaw.com, you could actually fill out a form, and I'll get a contact, and I could call you, or there's ways to schedule. On my website, my Calendly link is on there, which is Calendly.com/Kevin Benjamin, and you can get on my schedule and just make your own appointment. And if you need an in-office one, we could work that out. But most people don't. We do phone or Zoom. It's 2025. It's modern technology. Sometimes I have someone come in anyway. Sometimes it's easier, depending on what kind of case I'm doing, or what stage we're at, and where the person is. Sometimes say, "Oh, people, I work down the street." Okay, just come on in. Because there's documents and stuff like that. But on the initial call, I'm saying just to get information, we can do that by Zoom or phone, or I have an online file system I give you access to. Even intake questionnaires, they're all online in the cloud. You do them from home. Fill them out first, then I can give you information. If you got to see me in person, we can. But I don't need to see you in person, so don't worry about that. Okay, and I don't care where you are. You could be anywhere. I have clients all over the place.
Kevin's with us every month. We'll be replaying the show again next week. Kevin, thank you so much. The hour always goes by so fast with you. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next month.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye.
That's attorney Kevin Benjamin. Excuse me, I think we put on there BK. It's just Kevin Benjamin, and he's just a great both bankruptcy and tax relief attorney. That's going to do it for us today. We'll be back again with you next week with more Ask the Experts. Everybody have a blessed weekend. Thank you, Juan.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.